Anybody can commit domestic violence and intimate partner violence, no matter what race, what religious background, what cultural background, what socioeconomic background or education background you come from. People are capable of committing intimate partner violence and hurting themselves and destroying their families. I'm living proof of the fact that you can change. I am a former batterer. I caused tremendous damage in my relationship. I caused tremendous damage in my family. I continue to work every day to stop my violence, and that's going to be a lifelong journey for me.
You're not going to get your way using violence. A person might submit to stop the violence or for a reprieve in the violence, but it's not going to get you your way. For me, it never worked. The only thing being violent done was cost me 23 years of my life. I never, ever, ever wanted to commit violence. I think everybody does, but my physical reactions, my blood was, I didn't like the feeling of having to be violent, but it had became such a norm for me that you cross that threshold, I have to react or respond violently.
But if one individual comes into this building, or two or three, and sees somebody else sitting in the room and hears their story, and maybe the guy's 50 or 60 years old, and the guy hearing his story is 19 or 20, that may be the turning point for them to realize that I don't want to be sitting in this room like that guy is. And he may at that point become willing to change his behavior and stop his violence.
I grabbed her arms and restrained her, but I grabbed her with such force that it left bruise marks on both of her arms. I pushed her down, I held her down, I sat on top of her, I got on top of her. I tried to steal her journal and to punish her by reading her journal. And what I did in the course of all that physical violence was that I injured her pretty severely. I bruised her ribs. She was having a hard time breathing. And I also caused a lot of bruising throughout her body. I was doing a lot of gaslighting, a lot of lying, a lot of manipulating during that time in our relationship. I was also blaming her for all the problems in our relationship. The emotional abuse, the verbal abuse, the sexual abuse, the financial abuse just continued to ratchet up.
What we know, what we see about abusers is they're very ego-centered. They're stuck in the look at me, look at me, look at me stage of development that they should have grown out of as children. And with that, they're also very impulsive people. So when you combine this intensity for self-centeredness, ego-centeredness, and impulsivity, you find people who don't do well when things don't go their way. And they haven't developed coping skills from a brain-based perspective. They're not engaging the executive functions of their brain, rather reacting from an impulsive part of their brain, which is not real conducive to problem-solving, communication, or getting along well in a relationship. When you combine these ideas of impulsiveness and self-centeredness, you really are talking about an intimate partner where it's always about him without the ability to engage in problem-solving skills.
I was told by him that I'm basically his property. That's literally what he said, that I'm his property and he can have access to my body at any time and he can do whatever he would like with me. I remember driving on freeway and he would just slap my face because he did not like my face. Or I remember visiting one of our friends and we were coming back after the visit and he just pushed me down, he pushed my head down on a trunk of the car and just started beating me for no reason. And now I feel like he was probably enjoying having this power over me, and since I never put up the fight anymore, he felt like he can do anything to me physically or mentally or financially.
Victims shouldn't allow shame to be something that keeps them in a relationship that subjects them to abuse and violence. When the case ultimately comes to the domestic violence unit and I get to put eyes on it, I'm looking, generally speaking, at an isolated incident. For example, a police officer goes to a call, a victim may have been punched, and we have photographic evidence of an injury, a statement about what occurred leading up to the punch, and then we may have a charge filed based on that specific assault. What I'm doing is I'm beginning to peel those layers back, and I'm identifying and I'm finding psychological abuse, emotional abuse. I'm seeing financial isolation. I'm seeing victims who don't have access to bank accounts. I'm seeing victims who've been isolated from friends and family who feel as though they have nowhere to go.
Men are taught at an early age to take on that superior role in the relationship, to dominant role in the relationship, to make the decisions, to call the shots, to be the provider, the protector, the producer in that relationship. And there's a certain sense of entitlement that goes along with that, being the superior in that relationship, which leads to domestic violence, which leads to the inequality in relationships, which leads to the green light or permission to use violence in order to maintain this dominant role in relationships.
We know that the power and control wheel is a very good way of describing all of the tools that an abuser uses when they engage with the victim in order to engage in coercive control over them. Everything from financial abuse to abuse of the children. I'm convinced that if you have an abuser, they're going to abuse not just their significant other, but their children, pets as well. Probably have poor relationships with other members of the family that try to exert control over that abuser.
We always want to have the right outcome for every single case. If rehabilitation is the appropriate outcome, then that should be explored. If we have an individual who has been previously convicted of domestic violence and reoffends, then incarceration is a reality. A state prison commitment is a reality. If that is the proposed resolution of a case, that individual may not want to resolve the case, and then we're going to trial. And we know that there are still challenges even taking a case to trial. You may have an uncooperative victim. You may have proof problems. And so if you have somebody who is facing some serious prison time, there may be a desire to not admit to the conduct. But prior to rehabilitating someone or making that decision of whether rehabilitation is the appropriate outcome, we would want to know, are there provable facts? Do we have competent evidence that there is some underlying issue that has caused this criminal behavior? If there's persuasive evidence that there is some sort of connection between whether there's a mental illness or addiction connected to the violent behavior, and we think it can be treated, then rehabilitation should be explored. On the other hand, there are cases that are so severe that incarceration may be the appropriate outcome.
I was strangled by him, and one night I remember after he was strangling me, I lost conscious for a little bit, and when I woke up, I had red dots all over my face.
It is a difficult situation to assess or balance the victim's desires with a prosecutor's responsibility to seek justice. As prosecutors, we represent the people of the state of California. We don't represent individual victims. On the other hand, victims have constitutional rights under Marcy's law, where their voice is required to be listened to. So I think the best we can do sometimes is to do that analysis of what is the right outcome and do the best that we can do to balance perhaps the victim's desire to not go forward with prosecution with our responsibilities as prosecutors to seek justice and protect the public.
Letting a domestic violence offender go by, not being held accountable, creates a significant risk to our community, to the victims themselves, and to law enforcement officers. If a victim's strangled even once, they're 700% to 800% more likely to be the victim of completed homicide in the future. And also concerning, they're at least 600% more likely to be a victim of an attempted homicide in the future. So when I'm looking at holding offenders accountable, it's to protect the community and also to keep that offender from putting themselves in a situation that is going to be very detrimental to their future as well.
When I was on parole, our violation started at a year. I did 4 years because I wasn't doing Man Alive. I didn't want to hear it. I needed my violence. I needed that side of me because I wasn't done running the streets. So why would I go participate in this program that's trying to take something away from me that I needed? And I literally did 4 bullets, which we call it bullet, but it's a year. I did 4 years because I wasn't doing that program. I actually didn't do Man Alive and complete Man Alive until it was my decision, my choice to do it. I wasn't mandated by the courts. I wasn't even on parole or probation at the time when I did it. I just started coming and paying attention to him and paying attention to the material. More so him. I wanted that. I knew that if I was going to be successful in being a dad and staying on the street, that I needed that in my life. I needed something that would anchor me from the inside, from no matter what another person did to me, to hold myself accountable for my actions. So, yeah, that's how. And it's crazy because he remembered me from 2 of my violations. He was like, "Yeah, I remember when you used to come in here and I would ask people if they don't want to be here to leave, and I'm out." And then just one time, I wanted something different. I got tired of the same results. My results were always the same. Prison. And I was lucky that those were the results because I've been shot, stabbed, car accidents. It could have ended up way different for me. As bad as I had it on the street, it wasn't bad as sitting in them cells. And I got accustomed and used to being home for once in my life. I don't think, when I was in the midst of my violence and my addictions and just running the streets, I don't think I ever even stayed on the streets for 140 days from the age of 12 to 37.
I was really impressed with a presentation that I saw at a conference. The people that I saw were from Belgium. And they said that what they do is they sit down with the abusers and ask them, what are the things that are causing you trauma and stress in your life? Is it work? Is it alcohol? Is it drugs? Is it, other issues with the family that you need to work out? And they actually sit down and try to develop a program to do that. I really think, and I'm not saying that they've cured domestic violence or this is going to completely eliminate it, but the reduction possibilities can't be overlooked. So if, and I know that people will say, oh, you know, those programs cost a lot of money. Every domestic violence arrest has impacts that cost money. It impacts the victims that cost money, impacts, you know, whether it's hospitals, whether it's doctor bills, whether it's mental health issues, whether it's incarceration costs, all of those things cost money. So we have to find some kind of program that's going to help them as adults create their own self-respect and their own ability to not use anger as an option.
I realized that I had been violent not only in my relationship with my ex-wife, but I had been violent and abusive to almost all the women in my life that I had been in a relationship with, all the way back to high school. I didn't understand that. I just, you know, there was so much that I thought was just normal behavior. The other thing that really helped me to understand things about my behavior was the impact and realizing the impact. We spent a lot of time in Man Alive going over the impact of our behavior, who it impacted, how it impacted people in our lives, our children, our partner, our community, our families, and ourselves. So that was also a big wake-up moment for me.
Preventing intimate partner violence before it happens is so important because it affects so many people in the U.S. and has such significant health and economic consequences, not only for individuals, but also their families and communities. Prevention is the only way to fully address violence by stopping it before it ever happens in the first place.
Prevention is possible. We now have many evidence-based strategies to prevent intimate partner violence. But we also know that no one strategy or policy or program is enough to address this multifaceted problem. Violence is affected by risk and protective factors that occur across the lifespan. To have lasting effects and truly end violence, we need multiple sectors to work together: health, justice, business, and education, to implement the kinds of strategies that are needed to really change the individual, social, physical, and economic conditions that facilitate intimate partner violence in our communities.
I'm coming from a prosecutor's perspective. I still believe that there are people that need to be prosecuted and domestic violence people that need to have consequences. As adults, we have to have consequences for our actions. So I'm not anti-prosecution in any way, but I really do believe that the system needs to incorporate hope in every facet of the system.
I think we want to look at early intervention. I think we want to look at what programs are available to children who are in homes of domestic violence. We know that there is a connection between witnessing domestic violence in the home and becoming either a perpetrator or even a victim of domestic violence. As prosecutors, we don't get involved until a case is before us, but there are other things out there that can be made available. What involvement does Child Welfare Services have? What type of intervention that can they do inside the home?
So I believe that communication can play a significant role in stopping or interrupting intimate partner violence. I think that communication, open and honest communication, is the key, and also negotiating boundaries, negotiating agreements with each other instead of making assumptions or conclusions or over-functioning for the other person in the relationship is very, very important. Asking questions, being willing to share experiences, sometimes painful experiences, can help the other person get a better insight and a better understanding and appreciation for what the other person in the relationship may be gone through or is going through or is struggling with.
To be able to at least communicate to people that are involved in rage situations where they have acted out violently, that there is hope for you. We have to be able to communicate that. Because if we don't, if all we do is ostracize and condemn and point fingers, then we are going to end up with monsters. And all that monster is going to do is do more violence.
I was very resistant. I did not want to go to a program. I didn't want to go to the batter's treatment program. I thought that she should go to a program. She was the one that started the fight. She was the one that escalated the fight. I was very much in denial of my own violence and my own abusive behavior. And I just felt really resentful that I had to be in this room with other men who had committed violence and I had not. I didn't realize how badly and that I had committed violence, or how much or how long I had been committing domestic violence in my relationship.
Once people saw that I had changed, they kind of tested me to see if it was real. And that was my biggest struggle. Like, boy, you know, it would be easy for me to resort back. When I learned who I was authentically, it was easier for me to sit in that, to be kind and loving and courteous and gentle, punctual, a bunch of the good stuff, you know what I mean? The stuff that when you leave, you can hold your head up high. So there, you know, there was a tug of war within myself, like, ooh, I just want to, you know, because there's always that initial thought, like, ugh. But then you got to think. Well, I had to think. I can't speak for nobody else. I had to think, is it worth it?
Part of our job as facilitators here, we want to make them feel like they want to come back, not like they have to, because have to has that implication that they don't have a choice. So it can be a tricky balance at times. For them to be successful for a period of time after they leave here, the one main component that they need to do and put into practice is practice. They need to practice feeling their feelings, asking for what they want and what they need, and learning how to ask permission, make agreements, and if need be, once again, walk away.
Take responsibility, you know, to stop blaming others for your actions, to stop being a victim, to stop seeing yourself as a victim, to own your responsibility of what you've done to cause harm, to clean up your side of the street, and know that there is help out there available to you. Know that there are programs available to you, that you can get counseling and support, and know that you're not alone. Know that you're not the only one that's suffering or dealing with this problem, that there are many, many, many people out there just like yourself that are struggling with their anger, they're struggling with their abusive behavior, that may be struggling with their trauma that they may have endured as, you know, in their childhood. Many, many men that I work with have told me over the years that they grew up in homes where there was domestic violence. I grew up in a home where there was domestic violence. And so understanding the root causes of domestic violence and educating and learning that trauma-informed therapy helps a lot when dealing with domestic violence. And really knowing that you're not alone, that you can get help, that you can change. I'm living proof of the fact that you can change. I am a former batterer. I caused tremendous damage in my relationship. I caused tremendous damage in my family. And now, over the last 23 years of my life, I have done many, many things to heal those wounds and to heal that damage. Know that you have the ability to heal not only for yourself, but also with the family and the people that you've negatively impacted, the people that you've hurt. You have the opportunity to heal. You have the opportunity to forgive yourself, and you have the opportunity to ask for forgiveness from others.